Dear students, this is module 15 of paper 8, that is disguised handwriting. After studying this module, you will be able to know what are disguised writing, learn the nature of disguised writing and identify the features of disguised writing. Now, let me give you a brief introduction of disguised handwriting. A forensic document examination normally consists of the comparison of naturally written question and requested text to determine if they are of common authorship or not. Occasionally, a forensic document examiner receives a case in which he or she observes distortion in either the disputed text or the requested exemplar. Now, some causes of distortion in the writing can be temporary or permanent: health problem, missed medication, writing position, chemical or alcohol abuse, or disguise. Examination involving document containing distorted text are discussed in this chapter. Now, this section will discuss intentional distortion, that is, disguise of handprint and numerals. Now, disguised handwriting is the willful modification of a person's natural writing for the purpose of concealing identity. Chambers in 20th Century Dictionary defines disguise as to change the appearance of, to conceal the identity of a false appearance with respect to handwriting signature. The disguise may also be defined as an intentional alteration of the appearance of handwriting or signatures to conceal natural writing, to defy identification, or may also be defined as an alteration of the appearance of writing by assuming another style to conceal the normal writing style. Now, the effort of the writer is directed to hide his personal characteristics and to adopt the characteristic foreign to his own. These days, persons can be found guilty of forgery on handwriting testimony also, and this fact provokes many criminals to disguise their handwriting in an attempt to evade justice. Most laymen have a classic impression that disguise means gratuitous writing as found in blackmail and kidnap notes and in some anonymous letters. Disguised inscription is used more often for passing fabricated checks, writing comparison specimen, and so the most common and real-world disguise is one which attempts not only to keep the writer anonymous but that it also appears to be natural handwriting, thus arousing no suspicion. Then comes disguise of numerals. You know, the appearance of disguise in numeral is less than the occurrence in handprint and handwriting. The infrequent use of disguise in numbers may be due to the general misconception that numbers are not identifiable. In addition to this belief, the writer's focus tends to be more on successfully disguising text, thus overlooking the numbers. Disguise of numerals may not always be recognized. Inconsistency, tremor, awkwardness, and lack of varying pen pressure provide gratuitous forms commonly associated with disguise. Now, a limited presence of numbers in this question, text, or more subtle method of disguise, such as use of an alternate number form, make it difficult for the forensic document examiner to determine if he or she is examining. Now, the difference between disguise and distortion is only the intent behind it. In disguised writing, the writer is making a conscious effort to change his or her letter formations in order to avoid being identified. However, in distortion, the writer is intentionally altering his or her writing. Distorted writing shares most of the same characteristics as disguised. Fluency is one feature that may be present in distorted text but absent in disguised writing, whereas inconsistency and lack of fluency present red flags to the forensic document examiner that the writing may be disguised as opposed to distorted. Now, for example, tremor and pen stops tend to occur at inappropriate locations on a character when they are a result of disguise and not distortion. A conclusion as to the authorship of handprinting and numeral is merely based on the writer's combination of habits and characteristics within the set of writing. A conclusion most likely cannot be reached if the disguised handprint is either a drawing or illegible to the point of being a scribble. However, the fact that the writing is disguised does not necessarily negate the possibility of determining the authorship. The quality of the disguise will determine the writer's success in preventing a forensic document examination of the disputed text. There are people who choose to use handprinting as their means of disguise because they believe it cannot be identified. Others, however, produce disguised and handprinting by attempting to change from a usual to unusual manner of writing.
Let us discuss the methods of disguise. Numerous papers, published and unpublished, and chapters in books have been written regarding the characteristics writers commonly use when attempting to disguise their handwriting or handprint. Inconsistency in letter forms, tremors, poor line quality, use of alternate letter forms normally not used by the writer, angularity of letter formations, numerous individual strokes, stick printing, the overwriting of letters, use of the unaccustomed hand, use for squared forms, use for grotesque forms, and intentional misspellings are characteristics commonly associated with intentional disguise. Utilizing one or more of these techniques alters the pictorial appearance of handwriting. Davidson and Keckler categorized the use of certain characteristics in their study of 50 writers. To change in slope was utilized by 23 of the 50 participants. It was almost the most difficult characteristic for the writer to maintain throughout the exemplar. Approximately half of the writers in this study disguised their handprinting by changing the size of the letter forms and spacing, lengthening or shortening the upper and lower extensions, and changing terminal strokes of the upper and lower case letters. Of the 28 writers who utilized this later characteristics as a form of disguise, change to the terminal stroke occurred more in the capital letters D, H, R, U, and letter Y. The most commonly changed lowercase letters were letter D, E, G, H, L, M, N, P, Q, S, U, and W. Lengthening the terminal strokes and adding curves or embellishing the letters were the most common methods for changing the terminal strokes. Not surprisingly, 46 of the 50 writers changed their capital letters by using a block style of printing, shortening or lengthening the beginning and ending strokes, or embellishing the letters. Only 35 of the participants changed their lowercase letters. Of the 35, 10 changed from either all uppercase to lowercase letters or vice versa. Formal education influences the characteristics chosen by the writer. Hull's study, out of 160 participants, 3 revealed those with fewer than 12 years of education were more likely to use handwriting as their method of disguise. 28% of this group was least likely to change their numeral formations. Change in number forms was used as a method of disguise by 81% of the participants with a higher education degree. Alternate capital letters were used by 96.9% of the 160 participants, while only one writer used change in height ratio. Hand printing using the unaccustomed hand is another method of disguise. This method usually affects the skill level of the writing, thereby creating a drastic difference in pictorial appearance of the letters. Dawson's study confirmed past research regarding the use of the unaccustomed hand as a method of disguise. His study was comprised of 20 participants who were instructed to write the London letter once with the right hand and once with the left hand. Hand printing produced by the unaccustomed hand, sometimes referred to as offhand writing, is characterized by loss of fluency, and the letters are generally larger than their right handed counterparts. Other characteristics observed in this study include the following: rounded portions of letters such as letter A, D, and G were jagged and subject to abrupt directional changes in pen movement. Tick marks were more prevalent. Vertical or horizontal strokes used in the staffs and crossbars of letters like B, D, F, H, L, and T were curved, straight, or wavy, and most crossbars were sloped haphazardly, even though the unaccustomed hand affects the pictorial appearance of the writing. The examiner may still be able to conduct a complete examination. The writer using the unaccustomed hand will still produce familiar letter forms because it is extremely difficult to focus attention on producing a readable product and invent new letter formations. The writer's combination of habits is still present within the set of handprinting, making it possible for the forensic document examiner to conduct an examination and reach a conclusion. Now, let us see the purpose behind the disguise. Disguised handwriting is most commonly used in the following situations. Number 1, writing fictitious checks. Number 2, endorsing stolen checks, writing anonymous letters, extortion notes, etc., submitting handwriting standards, and the last one, signing name with the purpose of denying signature later on. In anonymous letters, the endeavor of disguising the forms of writing is very common. Anonymous pseudo-anonymous letters are generally written in dealing with social, sexual, and intimate relations and other concerns to cause suffering, bitterness, and distress between relations, friends, or the society as a whole. The motive of writing anonymous letters is sometimes to secure money by threats or blackmailing, or to secure wrongful gain in matters of love, envy, and jealousy, political and social prejudice, and family frauds. It is generally found that in some cases, defendants deny the authenticity of their signature, of their genuine signatures on the papers and receipts signed by them. When they are asked to give specimen of their handwriting for the purposes of comparison with the signatures in dispute, in majority of cases such persons disguise or attempt to disguise the forms and pictorial effects of the letters more or less according to their capacity or dexterity. The specimen writings thus obtained make the task of the investigator difficult to a certain extent, and sometimes enough material or unconscious writings are required to arrive at a correct conclusion. Now, let us see what are the various features of disguised handwriting. Disguised writing attributes encompass a number of controlling factors, and its success is directly related to the skill and the imagination of the subject and the amount of questioned writing involved. Most persons are able to alter some of their writing habits, and most can successfully hide their identity in a small amount of writing, such as single signature. However, most are unable to maintain a disguise when they have to write a large amount of material, such as an entire letter or several exemplars form. Therefore, it can be seen that if a single signature is questioned, the writer might be able to successfully mask his identity, while his chance of being identified increases as he continues to write. It should also be seen that if the exemplars are disguised, the more exemplars you obtain, the greater the chances are that some of the writings will contain some of the normal characteristics of the writer. One of the best things an investigator can do when taking exemplars is to have some non requested specimen of the person to compare with the requested specimens. These will enable him to see if there is any obvious differences between these collected specimens and requested writings. When most persons who are giving a disguised specimen are confronted with a naturally written specimen, they will discontinue the attempted disguise. More or less of the features often found in disguised writing that were identified by Ed Alford are: number 1, failure to change speed of execution; number 2, slant or slope change; number 3, use of the awkward hand; number 4, use of hand printing; number 5, size change; number 6, arrangement changes; number 7, angularity change; number 8, spacing change; number 9, spelling changes; number 10, altered approach strokes; number 11, altered terminal strokes; number 12, altered extensions, upper and lower case; number 13, capital letters style change. Number 14, lowercase style change. Number 15, use of circular I, dot, or period. Number 16, changes in numerals. An examination of these findings indicates that persons use many different methods, alone or in combination, to effect a disguise. Following are some features. Number 1, smooth, unbroken strokes and rounded forms. Number 2, misplaced and misshapen I dots and T crosses. Number 3, letters tapered eligibly towards the end of words. Number 4, marked differences in pressure on upstrokes and downstrokes. Number 5, delicate pressure at beginning and ending strokes of letters. Since in general communication, the more quickly the writing is written, the more natural it is. The subsequent are also signs of naturalness when bring into being in large bodies of writing, for example, a note or a letter. Now, number 6 would be joining of initials or words. Number 7, wide writing and spacing. Number 8, simplification of forms such as capitals. Number 9, absence of approach strokes to certain letters, for example, in letter A, in letter F, H, T, U, V, and in letter W. Now note that more or less person write rather slowly yet naturally, and it have need of considerable skill to distinguish between the natural writing of a semi-literate person and an imitation of such a person's writing. Have a reminder that in order to improve your own capability in learning to recognize natural writing, keep in mind that characteristics described above, especially the first 5 points. One might wonder which writing, the question or standard, should be examined first to determine if it was naturally made. As a particular matter, however, it is recommended that the question material be examined first on this point. This is because you can save yourself a considerable amount of time in the total examination. Let's assume that you examined the questioned material and that you determine that the writing was made with considerable deliberation, that it represents a tracing, or that it is an effort to sketch writing. If determination is made, you know right away that even if you examine thousands of sheets of the writing of suspect, that you are never going to be able to positively identify anyone as the writer of the questioned material. Now, let me tell you how identification of disguised handwriting is done. A well educated person, when they write, they can write in different manner, and the one writing will not tally with other. It is not difficult, but impossible for an individual to materially change the writing habits. It is just as difficult as to incorporate in one hand two different styles of writing. Experiments have shown that it is not difficult as to incorporate on one hand for the skilled experts to reveal The identity of the writing is sufficient material for comparison is procured. The main reason is that the writing is the product of unconscious habits and a man cannot retain consciousness for long. Secondly, persons generally do not know much about their writing characteristics and they try to alter the outer forms of letter only, considering that such changes will securely shield them. Certainly, writer fails to hide those hidden characteristics about which he is not familiar. The comparisons of these silent features make an examiner to trace out the real person and make the disguise vain attempt. In disguise handwriting, the writer tries to give an appearance as unlike his own habitual writing to the extent possible and have the disguised writing legible. In imitated writing, the writer tries to reproduce as perfectly as possible the form of the handwriting of another person. The efforts in disguise writing fail due to the inability of the writer his own unconscious and habitual characteristic. In limited writing, the writer fails in two ways. He can neither avoid all his own unconscious habits nor reproduce all those characteristics of the imitated writing, nor can he assume the unhesitating and natural facility with which natural writing is executed.
Now let us summarize this chapter. In this chapter, we have learned that disguised writing is an alteration of the appearance of writings by assuming another style to conceal the normal writing style. Whereas we have also come to know that there are many motives for which a forger can disguise the writing, or sometimes the writer himself denies his own signature or handwriting. A famous document examiner, Ed Alfred, categorized some features of disguised handwriting, which helps in examination of disguised writing. Then, to examine the disguised writing, it requires adequate amount of standards which can be compared easily.